But if he plays 60+% of the snaps for any other reason than significant injuries, then I'm with you. Horrible signing. I just don't think that's going to be the case.
Mac guys, here on Birds 365 on Derek Barnett Day, as John so declared earlier. We have a basic disagreement as to what Derek Barnett's level of play is in the National Football League as compared to his salary, as compared to what filter he's drafted through. John's very right about that. He was a first-round draft pick. He was a top half of the first-round draft pick. He was paid accordingly. His production did not match up to that. The hype, because he topped Reggie White's sack number at Tennessee, kind of set the bar pretty damn high on Derek Barnett, and he came in woefully underneath it. And I see the argument that John is trying to make. And while I acknowledge everything he says is right, he still stinks. Whatever prism you look at him through, he's not good enough. If you tell me miraculously he's going to become this under-control player who's never going to take ill-advised penalties, and that's why I think this is a Howie Roseman move, because you and I both saw it during the year, Sirianni, when he got caught on camera after an Eagle penalty, you could read Sirianni's lips saying, "It's always him," knowing full well who the penalty was going to be on. Derek Barnett, once again, jumping off sides, even 15-yard type penalties. I don't know that he's going to be more disciplined. Damo's point about, he's going to be motivated this year. He wants to get that big. He wasn't motivated coming into this year when he was going to free agency. But now this year he's going to be that much more motivated. I don't think motivation's got anything to do with it. I think he's the player that he is, and that player for me is not good enough. It will not be as painful this year because you're right, John. We don't know the details on the contract yet. It will 99.9% be less than he made last year. So if his play is what it usually is, it won't be as tough a pill to swallow as it has been in previous years. I just think the Eagles should have left the door open to get someone else better at that position than Derek Barnett.
Well, there's the difference. I think the door is still open, that if one of those guys falls, and I still think the Eagles will take a edge rusher in the first round of the draft, if one is there, if one of those top 5 that we always talk about is available to them, I think they're going to go in that direction. I don't think this shuts the door at all. That's kind of my point. Now, you said 99.9%. I'd like to leave that door open. No, it's 100% that he's not getting paid what he got paid last year. I mean, he got paid more than $10 million on the 5th-year option of his first-round contract. He's definitely getting less than that, 100%.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me ask, because I don't know, and I don't know if our Eagle fan streamers know either, because it's kind of an important point to understand, that Derek Barnett was on the 5th year of his contract. But supposedly, had he gone elsewhere, they would have taken a dead cap hit.
Yeah, they restructured it. They restructured it because they needed the room last year.
How do you restructure a contract without extending it?
It's the voidable year trick. You dummy it up, you give it to him up front as a signing bonus, and you spread out the signing bonus.
So he actually did sign a contract extension with the Eagles. It just amounted to nothing because it had voidable years, and those years had to be voided.
Yeah, bookkeeping trick that Howie uses all the time. It was dummy years essentially, or voidable, if you want to use the technical term. And they used that. They gave him like $9 million of his $10+ million in a signing bonus. So he's definitely getting less money than that. Now, look, if he plays, I'll say it right here, if he plays 66% of the snaps for any other reason or whatever the number was, 64% of the snaps, Other than significant injuries, like if Brandon goes down, if Josh Sweat goes down, if Hassan Reddick goes down, all right, then it's understandable. But if he plays 60+% of the snaps for any other reason than significant injuries, then I'm with you. Horrible signing. I just don't think that's going to be the case. So that's where we differ. It seems that you think there's a chance he's going to play the same level of playing time that he has in the past. I don't think that's the case, other than through injury, which is for every position everywhere around the league. And then the second disconnect we seem to have is you think this kind of shuts the door. I think they're still looking for an edge rusher in the draft. So we differ there. I don't think it shuts the door on anything. I think it's a safety net. That's what I think it is. I think it's a safety net. And I think it's a good one. I think it's a good one.
We don't know the contract numbers yet. So there can be, even as you project what he's going to do for the Eagles this year and his amount of usage, he could get enough money that it could still be a bad safety net contract. Because again, this is an unfinished product. The Eagles still could use another starting cornerback. Is it going to come in the draft? Is it going to come free agency? We don't know. They need another starting safety. Is it going to come in the draft? Is it going to come free agency? We don't know. They need another wide receiver. Is it going to come in the draft? I guess my point is, are they done in free agency? Is this it, that they've spent the money that they have, whatever they have tied into? And oh, by the way, this Derek Barnett contract is a 2-year contract that could become an 8-year contract with those voidable years that never actually come into fruition, like his contract this year with the Eagles putting money off going into the future. Are they done signing free agents? Because if they are, they haven't done enough to upgrade this team.
No, they're not done, but they're probably going to be in the range of these types of signings moving forward. And whether it's bringing guys back like Anthony Harris or Derek Barnett, or it's going out and getting the Zach Pascals of the world, they're going to bring in a corner. It might be Steve Nelson. They might bring Steve Nelson back, but they're going to sign a corner at some point. And if they don't sign Steve Nelson, it's going to be somebody else in the 1 year, probably $5-6 million range. That first wave of big money is gone. For the most part. There's a couple guys, Teron Armstead took a little bit longer to decide where he wanted to go, and ultimately ended up in Miami. We'll see. The big name for Eagles fans, most Eagles fans, is probably Honey Badger out there, and we'll see if he's able to get multiple years, or if, the league looks at him as a declining player, and he'll have to take a 1-year deal. I think if he has to take a 1-year deal, the Eagles would get involved in that. If it's multiple years, probably not. There's still some younger players with maybe some issues, injury issues, maybe. Deshaun Elliott from Baltimore, I think he's still out there. If he signed somewhere, I missed it. He's a younger player with some injury issues. He might get multiple years. The Eagles might get involved in something like that. But if you're talking about splashy players, most of that is dried up.
And again, I was hoping for more for the Philadelphia Eagles than we've gotten this far. If you tell me there's still some possibility, you and I agree that because the agent didn't come out with the numbers immediately, that the numbers are not going to be jump off the page type numbers. But it is a capped world in which the Eagles are playing with everybody else, and Howie is good at pushing off to future years. Unfortunately, he had one catch up with him this year with Derek Barnett. Can they save money for that dead money issue if they actually get him signed to a contract? Is this another way to just push debt going forward into future years?
Yeah, that would be. I'll ask Brad. I'll ask Brad Spielberger. I do not know because it's a new contract. Technically, I do now. Yeah, that's one I can't answer. So I'll try to ask Brad that. Maybe they can do it as an extension and use some kind of trick, but that's above my pay grade. That's a
Right. And that
Jake Rosenberg question.
yours and mine both. We're not the capologists that Brad is, but that's another thing that also scares me. Did they bring him back because they needed to, because it made good accounting sense? That gave them the chance to extend more money into the future. If that's the case, you're not just evaluating the player on what you think he can do for you for this upcoming year. Take what he did before and just completely throw it out the window. We know there are some Eagle fans that would find that basically impossible. And yeah, I'm not happy with the fact that he hadn't been as good as he was supposed to be from the day he was drafted. But I think I've got enough focus that I can say, all right, whatever Derek Barnett has done to this point, wherever he was drafted, irrelevant. Just evaluate him as a player. He's a player who was taken in the third round, late third round of the draft, and his salary was what it was. But we're now evaluating his salary going forward. I need to know what that salary is, and I'm sorry if they have a cap advantage by re-signing a guy like Derek Barnett, then you are just turning back the clock and you're just looking at what was on the table. Derek Barnett should purely be evaluated on what you think he can do for you in this upcoming year.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case for this reason. They had already come to the conclusion that they were moving on from Derek Barnett. The Eagles were like a lot of people, and that's when I brought it up earlier this week. I said, well, the longer he stays out there, it's evident he's not getting, like, if you look at over the cap or sport track, Spotrac, or whatever, and they do the evaluations, and that's what I mentioned on the show. They had Barnett at 3 years, 9 million a year. The Eagles were, they weren't going to pay Derek Barnett that. So they had already come to the conclusion that it was unlikely that he was going to be back. And then as there's no money, there's no market, it's not here. Where's the 3-year deal? Where's it? Everybody, we just talked about the first wave. Everybody's budgeting. They went in different directions at edge rusher, and there's still Derek Barnett out there. And then I think the Eagles came back into the picture and said, well, we can get him for 1 year and we'll see whatever it is. As we said, understandably, you want to see the contract. We'll see the contract when it gets filed. But Drew Rosenhaus is Drew Rosenhaus. His reputation is his reputation. I'm pretty confident in that prediction. It's not going to be great for the player's standpoint, but we'll see. We'll see. There's always a chance, I guess. But I think the Eagles, at the beginning of this process, they were like, well, we're done with Derek Barnett, and we'll go, whether it's Teron Jackson moving up a spot, or obviously first round of the draft, more likely would be the guy being an impactful player, which is affected a little bit, as I said, at least a little bit, by the Ajabo injury. And things change quickly in this league, who knows what happens now between now and April 28th as far as the other top 5 on everybody's list as far as edge rushers. So I think from their standpoint, they took advantage of a situation and they had a number. And if they could get him back at this number, they'd bring him back. And if they couldn't, they wouldn't. So very similar to Anthony Harris and everybody else in Boston and Scott, even restricted free agents. The Eagles with Greg Ward, if you think about it, they brought Greg Ward back, they brought Boston back, they tendered Nate Herbig, and they let Alex Singleton leave. They set these numbers and they said, if we can get these guys back at this number, we'll bring them back. If we can't, we can't. The one thing the Eagles are very good at, and I say all the time, Jody, is valuation and budgeting. So that's why I'm really very confident in those types of things. The problem comes with the evaluations. You know, that's where the problem comes. And, I also think, and I've mentioned this before recently on the show, I also think at times, they're a little bit too disciplined when it comes to the finances. Because I do think at times you do have to overspend a little to get maybe a particular player that can help you in the moment. Um, but I generally don't tend to worry about this team when it comes to valuation and not evaluation, valuation and budgetary things.
Here's something that just dawned on me, so I got to get your read on it. I don't know the answer. I don't know that you know the answer, but I'll ask you to read between the lines a little bit. Derek Barnett coming back, as is Brandon Graham, who they lost all last year. Brandon's age is what it is, and he's coming back off an injury. He's one of the most popular Eagle players, one of the best leaders in the clubhouse. So he's judged to a different light and prism than a guy like Derek Barnett is. Do we read the Barnett re-signing in any way as to what the Eagles think Brandon Graham is coming back at? Is it too early to know anything? Are they looked at as separate entities? They're both defensive ends. You still think they're motivated to take a defensive end at those one of those two picks in the middle of the first round if they're holding on to both of them and using both in the upcoming draft? Do we get any further read on where Brandon Graham is in his return? By the way, yeah, just a side programming note. We had Glenn Macnow on with us earlier this week, and Glenn mentioned on his show that he does on the weekends with Ray Dinger, they're going to have their first ever still active player on Tell Us Your Story. It's a great thing that they do on the weekends, bringing back guys, careers over and done with, looking back. They do not talk to players who are still active. They're doing Brandon Graham. What does that say? Does that mean Brandon's all but done, but he's going to come back for one more year? Does the signing by Derek Barnett tell us anything about where Brandon Graham is at before he joins Glenn and Ray on WIP on the weekend?
Well, I think it's part of the safety net that I was talking about. I mean, you do have to be realistic in that, Brandon is 34 years old. And we all know what that age means in this sport at that particular position. Yeah, he's a lot closer to the finish line than the starting gun, as they say. And you can't just assume he's going to be the same player coming off an Achilles. So I think that's part of the safety net. I can tell you, I've seen, Brandon was around a lot last year. I mean, he looked ready to go from a physical standpoint. Probably by November, he was moving around. Tremendous athlete. I don't think people realize how explosive Brandon Graham is. I joke, him and Darius Slay lived in Detroit. Obviously, Brandon lives there, and Darius played there for a number of years. And when the Eagles brought in Darius Slay, it might have been last offseason, actually. He and Brandon were working out together. And, the Instagram whatever videos. Brandon looked more athletic than Darius Slay. I don't think people really realize how athletic Brandon Graham is. So, do you lose some of that explosion at 34 coming off that injury? I don't know. If anybody's going to get it back, it's going to be Brandon. But I do think it's part of that safety net. I do. You can't just assume at his age he's going to be the exact same player.
That is something that only time will tell, or maybe Brandon will tell us. But if he tells us on the weekend with Glenn and Ray, you don't even know how much is accurate because we won't know till he gets back out there on the field. All right, wanted to jump back over to the wide receiver position. I was going to bring this up today. We know the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins, almost to the Jets, except did you see Tyreek's quote?
Yeah,
When asked
yeah.
about how
Or
close were you to
Jets.
go to
Or
the Jets,
Jets. Yeah.
nah. Okay, so all that reporting was just stone cold inaccurate. I think it was John McMullen here on Birds 365 yesterday correctly noted the Jets were used as a stalking pony. That
Yeah.
they ran up the price and ran up the price and ran up the price, and Miami finally matched what Kansas City wanted, and they said, "Okay, he'd rather go to Miami," so he's going to Miami. The Jets got used and abused, but I digress. The Chiefs now have to try and replace one of the most talented wide receivers in the league, and they're going to do so with one of Aaron Rodgers' old guys.
Excuse me for laughing, but yeah, I got a couple people who told me that. And you know what a shoe bill is, Jody?
Shoe Bill?
Yeah. It's
No.
a big stork bird, stork-like bird. It is a stork. But they are scary looking birds. Look up shoe
Really?
bill. Yeah. Oh, scary looking birds. One of my favorite pictures is this nasty looking shoe bill who just looks angry. And I got a bunch of people uh texted me, well, they're going to get Marquez Valdes Scantling, as if that's even in the same realm of Tyreek Hill. It's just so I posted a picture of the shoe bill, the angry shoe bill. It's absurd to think a player. Nothing against MBS. He by the way, he'd be wide receiver too here again, but no, not even in the same stratosphere of Tyreek Hill. So this is going to be interesting because look, Tyreek Hill's not going to be happy with no Patrick Mahomes. Bottom line. And Patrick Mahomes is not going to be happy with no Tyreek Hill. It's going to be interesting.
And here's the thing, and again, didn't see the exact details of the contract. Again, the fact that we're sitting here with Derek Barnett, the announcement came, we're starting to sneak up on 24 hours ago. You hit me up shortly after the show was over and done with yesterday, so we still don't have anything on his contract, which we read into. And then you have the original reporting of the contract, which can be just basically misleading because the devil is in the details. Marquez Valdes Scantling, 3 years, $30 million. Is he now a 10? I know the price of poker continues to go up in all facets of the National Football League, John, but is he a $10 million a year player?
Not to me. But
Not me
this
either.
is sort of like where we are in the NFL. Is anybody worth it? I get in this. I'm not criticizing other people because we have all these cap people and they're saying so and so isn't worth this, so and so isn't worth this. And usually I agree with them, to be honest. And MBS would be a perfect example of that. But I mean, that's the cost of doing business. So do you want to be involved with players like this or do you not want to be involved? And it's a difficult decision because I don't want to pay him that, but he's a heck of a lot better than the Eagles have. So I don't know the answer of that, to be honest.
I'll use a phrase that you used here yesterday, I think quite appropriately, as a matter of fact. Do you want to overpay? That you have your numbers, I have my numbers, much more importantly, the Eagles have their numbers, their valuation. And sometimes you say, yeah, we need to fill this position, this hole, this gap, call it what you want. And yes, even though our algorithm says we should pay X amount for a player, we're going to have to go X plus because the options are drying up and he's going to get this somewhere else if we don't get to this number. And yeah, the Eagles seem to be a team that stays very much away from overpaying. Kansas City with the deal yesterday for Marquez Valdes Scantling said, at least for me, yeah, we need to get wide receivers. We got an unhappy best in the league quarterback. We just took away one of his biggest weapons. If we just go out there and get him, big guy, we're not going to try and add to the mix and all. You just do it all by yourself. That's not going to work for us. So we'll take on a Marquez Valdes Scantling, and we'll be willing to overpay because I'm with you. I do not see him as a $10 million a year quarterback.
Now I'm trying to get Xander, by the way, to put up my tweet. There it is. There's a shoe bill, Jody.
That I wouldn't say scary as much as ugly.
That is
That's just one ugly bird.
he looks angry, doesn't he? That's the point.
Angry. Oh yeah, I'll go angry too.
He looks angry. So that's what I was angry compared when people started comparing Marquez Valdez Scantling to Tyreek Hill. But that's a shoe bill.
Okay, good to know. Good to know what a shoe bill is. I never have heard of that bird before, but that is one ugly bird, angry bird, call it whatever you want. That's a bird I wouldn't want to mess with. So I think you've got a correct read on it, John. We're hoping to hear from Connor Orr. He might be running a couple of minutes late with us here today. He texted me and said pickup line at preschool was exceedingly long today. So he's running a couple of minutes late, but we will get him up here in just a couple. One other guy I do want to hit you about for the upcoming season with all the players that are changing places and the like. Next week, we might try and go with a little bit more insight as to the rest of the teams in the division. Here's one good news as I sit here, because every day you come in and you start the show and you wonder what the Eagles do in the last 24 hours, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not a Derek Barnett fan. John kind of likes the safety net aspect of the signing. Oh, by the way, the Giants aren't doing anything either. Oh, by the way, the Commanders aren't doing anything either. And oh, by the way, the Cowboys seem to be losing more guys than they're bringing in. Man, John, is this was the worst division in football badly 2 years ago. It's just no team did not make above 500 to make the playoffs and win the division. Last year, at least the Cowboys were a legit playoff team, and they won the division, and the Eagles gave the division a second playoff team, an expanded playoff format, but a second playoff team. Oh, I think they're going back to being the NFC East this upcoming year. How about you?
Yeah, it doesn't look good on paper. The Cowboys were the one team that you could say, well, that's a legitimately talented team, and they've taken some pretty significant hits because, they've been paying these players for a long time, and you sort of have to do that transition, Amari Cooper most notably. So that's part of it as well. But yeah, overall, the NFC East does not look good on paper. And that was the sense of urgency in the offseason. I see Connor Orr popped in, so we got to bring him up. But Jody, the sense of urgency to have these 3 first-round picks and the ability, and that's why we were saying, all right, well, you have Russell Wilson out there, you have Deshaun Watson out there, but look, they wouldn't entertain coming here. But there was a sense of urgency because you're in a bad division. You have all this draft capital to go make the splash, but there was no path, Jody. There was no path.
Sometimes you need to forge your own path. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. Coming up next, Connor Orr, national writer for Sports Illustrated, going to jump aboard Birds 3.